So at this custom home I'm building in High Springs, we just finished putting on this 26 gauge TCM ultra rib metal roof, and I'm going to go over the steps we took to install it. The first step is to always put down a good roof decking, and so whenever I'm installing a metal roof, I like to use CDX plywood, and that's what most of the installation engineering calls out for metal roofing. And so on this house, it had 1932 CDX, which, being in Florida, will be a nice, strong, roof decking for this house. And so once we get the roof deck nailed off and we pass inspection, we get the house dried in. We're going to use synthetic underlayment, which, you got to make sure you're using a high temp synthetic so that way it doesn't melt underneath the metal. Make sure it's approved for metal roofing. And then we also use 1x4 Purlins on this house. And, there's several advantages to the 1x4 Purlins, but, one of the main ones is energy efficiency. It's going to get that hot metal roof up off the deck and give an air space between the roof decking and the metal panels. And here are the panels all installed. Once we started installing the actual panels, this was about a 2.5 to 3 day job. And so some of the specific things I did on this job, one of them, I always, whenever I do a metal roof, and really whenever I do, have too much siding that goes up above a roof, but especially on a metal roof, we'll always install the siding first and have it painted. So that way, we don't have to worry about installing all these nice metal panels that are pristine, and then the siding guys having to walk all over them to install the siding, and then also the painters, to come up and, bring a bucket of paint, have to paint over the metal panels is not super practical. So I always like to go ahead and get that all installed in advance. We'll put the wall flashing first, and then, install the siding over the top and then paint over the top before we ever actually come to install the metal panels. That's what we did on this job. And then something else I like to do whenever possible is limit the number of penetrations in the roof. So, we've got plumbing stacks and we have bath fans and hood exhausts that we all have to run out. So, the plumbing stacks, relatively have to go out the roof. There are other alternatives that aren't as practical. So the plumbing stacks have to go out of the roof, which is what you see here as the only 2 penetrations we have in the roof. There's these 2 plumbing stacks, and we made sure that they didn't fall on ribs. We planned it out so that way there was flexibility in the piping, and the metal roofers were able to decide specifically where the plumbing stacks are coming out. So that's, limits the likelihood of a leak even more. And so the other potential penetration that we'd have in the roof would be all the mechanical venting. So the bathroom fans, the kitchen hood exhaust. And so we opted to go with those sidewalls. Most people typically choose to go on the roof deck, but in an effort to try to limit leaks, I like to go sidewall, whenever distance allows. And that's what we did at this house. And so, all in all, this was a really clean job. My roofer's here for about 4 days total, including Purlin install. And the finished product of this 26 gauge, Galvalume metal roof is really going to give my client the look they were going for on this house.